What's going on, YouTube? My name is Stefan. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Reckless Logic. Please make sure you guys pop that like button, hit the subscribe button, and please smack the notification bell. Do not miss any more posts to me. Let's get straight into this video. Alrighty, guys, I will be talking about a couple of situations that have been on my mind. Now, like usually, I always try when it comes down to these type of situations, I try to wait, collect my thoughts, and then respond. So that's basically what I'm going to be doing right now. All right, so the first story we will be discussing is Jazlyn, and hopefully I'm not butchering her name because you know I'm known to butcher people's names. Jazlyn and Jontae Adams. Now, this particular situation ended up happening in Chicago, Illinois. And basically what ended up happening was that Jaslyn is a 7-year-old little girl and Jontae is a 29-year-old black man. They're both melanated. Now, the situation ended up coming about. Apparently, Jontae and Jaslyn, they were both in a drive-thru at McDonald's. And basically what ended up happening, they ended up getting shot. And in the process, Jaslyn ended up losing her life. Jontae I believe, is still in the hospital fighting for his life. And apparently, now, this is where speculation of what I ended up seeing on social media. Basically, what ended up happening, people were saying that whenever he ended up qualifying for the PPP loan. And so what the government ended up doing, they ended up releasing names and addresses. Now, in response to that, Jontae was on his social media. I forgot exactly what site it was. He basically ended up saying that how, you know, hopefully my ops don't see me or catch me, da-da-da-da. And this situation ended up happening. Now, what are my initial thoughts? Now, I will say this is a very sad situation. This situation could have most definitely been avoided. I feel very, very bad for the family. I feel like this situation could have been avoided, and I do want to discuss when it comes down to the media. This is one thing I really want to touch upon when it comes down to this situation, because I feel like everybody already has talked about the situation and gave the necessary sentiments. When it comes down to the media, the thing I do not like is, one, how they try to manipulate. When I was looking the story up, when I was actually reading the story, I didn't like how a lot of sites, a lot of blogs were talking about his history, him probably not being the quote unquote role model for people. He was probably into certain things that probably weren't right, yada yada yada. Because I did see that a couple of times when I was researching this story, and they were trying to make it seem like, you know, this is what happened because he was in this types of activity. But I can understand that. Like, I understand where you're going with it. But the thing I don't like is that within these certain blogs and sites that I end up researching, end up actually reading the whole articles, it failed to mention how the government released people's names and addresses. For one, I think that was I feel like that was a very dumb move to make. Why would you release the names and addresses, especially addresses of individuals who approved for the PPP loan? Anytime someone wins a lot of money and you put their identity out there, you are putting them at risk to be hurt or killed. Now, I don't know if there was a robbery or anything like that. From what it looks like, it looks like they didn't really want to rob them. They look like, from the situation, the attackers basically wanted to hurt Jontae, and I think his child ended up being collateral damage in the process. But I felt like it was a very dumb move for the government to release names and addresses of people who have approved for the PPP loan, because I saw a lot of people tweeting that's how his ops ended up finding his address and just about in turn finding the area that he reside, basically. And so I did not like that. And then they was too busy focusing on his past or his current situation of him being in certain activity. But however, it failed to speak or mention how the government played a part in his daughter's death. And that I really didn't like that. So I just want to say that. I'm going to get to the next situation. Next up, I'm going to talk about, we will be referring to Derek and George Floyd in this particular case. Now, as everybody knows who George Floyd is the black individual. He ended up getting a knee on his neck. In turn, because of the rough actions of cops, he ended up losing his life. Now, Derek was one of the cops that ended up getting charged, and he ended up getting his verdict. Now, the thing with his verdict, he ended up getting, he was basically guilty, basically, in other words. Now, how do I feel? I feel like it's just, I hate saying justice, but I felt like he got what he deserved. I felt like he got what he deserved. And I felt like, from me watching the video of his reaction of him getting that particular verdict, I think that he really didn't think that he was going to go to jail for murder. I really think he really thought that he was just going to get away, even though it has been a pattern, even though it has been a cycle of where cops, law enforcement have murdered melanated individuals and gotten away without any type of repercussions or consequences. So it just really blew my mind, because this whole time, by his reaction, I felt like he really thought he was going to get away, because when he got the whole "you're guilty" verdict, you could tell his reaction. He was real shocked by it. So that's my thoughts on the verdict. And I really do feel very happy for the family that they did indeed get the situation came out the way they wanted it to come out. Now, let's talk about the reactions that people, just about from the general public and everybody, how they felt about the verdict. Now, of course, everybody, melanated people, we were happy for the verdict, because when it comes down to law enforcement murdering black men, black women, black children, it's a very, I could probably count on my hand how many times those law enforcement officers or law enforcement in general ended up receiving consequences, or consequences that actually matched the crime. So people were very excited. People were happy about what had taken place. But I do want to talk about Tomi Lahren. Now, for those who don't know who Tomi Lahren is, just about, she's a conservative commentator. I believe she had her own show as well. But the thing with Tomi Lahren is that, let me see, can I find my phone too? Because I can find my phone, because I end up saving the tweet too. Now, I ended up screenshotting the tweet that she ended up, putting up. And of course, she responded. Now, the thing with Tomi, let me see, can I put it up real quick? The thing with Tomi is that she likes to quote unquote admit that it was wrong what happened to George Floyd. But then she also likes to criticize the types of methods that melanated people reside to or decide to take. Now, I'm gonna read these tweets out. Now, Tomi ended up tweeting, is the Foot Locker safe tonight? Should be, right? Justice, right? No need to steal in the name of George Floyd anymore, right? Being very sarcastic. You got your justice, so I'd assume there would be peace in forgive me, y'all. Minneapolis tonight. No rioting, no looting, no harassing officers. Now, this is another tweet. What happened to George Floyd at the hands of Chauvin was wrong, but there is still no evidence it had anything to do with race. We're gonna talk about that a little bit later when it comes down to Mikaya. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, Derek was found guilty on all counts in under a day. Any violence / rioting / looting that happens tonight can't be blamed on a racist justice system. Now, let me say this, because I want to be very clear. when people have this notion that just because one action or one case or very few cases have given melanated people the quote unquote justice or equality that everybody should receive in this country, doesn't mean that the system still isn't corrupt, doesn't mean that the system isn't still racist at hand. Because I tell people this all the time. Just because a system, you have good people within a system, very few good people within a system, doesn't mean that the system still doesn't run its course. So yes, you may have some good cops, but however, or you may have some good people within the government or within law enforcement, but the thing is about that, when the system itself was built on racism, or the system itself was built on dehumanizing and destroying minorities, then it's still going to run its course. Get what I'm saying? Because yes, you may have a good cop here, but however, you got a whole bunch of bad cops there. Yes, you may have good cops on the line, but quote unquote, when the crime happens or X, Y, and Z, or things be mixed up and people try to leave certain details out just so they can run with a certain narrative, guess what? The judge may not be 100% the person you may want to trust. So just because it's quote unquote a few cases may have happened and people may have gotten their justice does not mean that the system is still not corrupt. All right. Okay, she also said, and when I say your justice, I'm referring to the groups who have been loudly declaring no justice, no peace, as an excuse to ravage communities. Never said I disagreed with the verdict, never said Derek wasn't wrong, simply said you don't get a pass because of it. Now, let me say this. Actually, should I read the... Okay, I'm going to read the next one. Yeah, I'm going to read the next one, then I'm going to comment. I agreed with the verdict of the trial. I don't agree and haven't ever agreed or given a pass to lawlessness in the name of George Floyd or anyone else. I also loudly condemned what happened on January 6th. I'm consistent. The left isn't. Black Lives Matter isn't. Now, let me say this, because people do seem to have different perspective, different stance when it comes down to the rioting and looting. Now, people say things of the nature of how come protests ends up equaling or resulting to rioting and looting, the same way arrest, especially arrest when it comes to melanated individuals, equals murder or death without, quote unquote, the proper excuse why, or the abuse of melanated people. Now, what's my stance on the rioting and looting? Now, I will say this, for me in particular, now this is where everybody else's opinions start to go separate ways. For me personally, I do not agree, or I don't believe I would be out there rioting and looting, because I do feel like this. I do feel like whenever there's a cause, and people are doing something for a cause. However, I do believe whenever there's certain situations, there are people within that cause are just only participating for their own personal benefit. Now, the reason I say that, for me, I do not agree with the whole rioting and looting, but however, I understand why, which means that I'm not going to be sitting out here judging, oh, no, you do it. Because at the end of the day, I understand why. The rioting and looting is deeper than just people just want to steal or quote unquote, they want to destroy X, Y, and Z. Here's the thing. The thing is that when you have a group of individuals, melanated people, they're asking for justice, they're asking for peace, they're asking to be treated just like their Caucasian counterparts. But however, when it comes to their livelihood, when it comes to their peace, when it comes to them being treated the same as white counterparts in court, socially, economically, it seems to be a big difference. And people seem to just brush it off their shoulders. Or people seem to find, quote unquote, convenient excuses for why things may occur. Now, when you keep asking somebody, and doing it peacefully, because here's the thing too, when people were peacefully protesting, people had an issue. When people were kneeling during the national anthem, people called it disrespectful to our troops. But yet, people would sit up there and mace an officer in the army or within the military. One is considered disrespectful to our troops, and the other is not considered disrespectful because guess what? They was quote unquote enforcing the law. That doesn't make any sense to me. Now, like I said before, let me continue saying, when you ask somebody, this is wrong, and you're trying to be peaceful, you're peaceful protest, and you're doing this, you're doing that, you're trying to stop from getting violent, and they're just brushing everything you say or act like they don't hear you and ignore you. What do you expect from human beings? Frustration will start to come, and eventually violence will start to come. Because apparently, when I was being peaceful and talking to you, it wasn't working. But now I'm being violent. That seems to get through to you. Now, like I said before, I don't agree with all the rioting and the looting. Now, however, I do understand why. Now, I'm going to say this too. If you're going to riot and loot, this is not me promoting violence, but if you're going to do it to the stores that don't like black people or melanated people, because some people don't like to be called black. Melanated people. Do it to the stores or the organizations that just about organizations that support hate groups against minorities, quote unquote. Those are the stores and organizations that you riot and loot and you show your frustration to. Now, Boosie. Well, that was all her tweet. Yeah, so we done with Lauren. Boosie ended up putting a tweet. Now, Boosie, where he at? Because he always doing something. Boosie ended up putting up a tweet saying he lucky he ain't going to jail in Louisiana and put up 2 eggplant signs and put hashtag boss call would have been made. Now, Boosie, you have to stop. Everything that he said has something to do with penis or dick. Like, Boosie, you was better off not making that tweet. You was better off not saying anything. You probably should just left that alone, player. Like, you should just left that alone. That's all I'm gonna say on that. And I'm just gonna leave that alone. I'm not gonna get too deep with that one. Okay, so another thing we'll talk about when it comes down to the George Floyd situation. When Derek ended up getting basically arrested, charged, basically another story ended up coming out later on, an update, is that he had to be put on suicide watch and basically had to be watched because he basically was quote unquote suicidal or whatever. Now, here's my thing about the suicide watch. No. Do not try to kill yourself now, quote unquote. Don't try to take your own life now because you don't want to suffer. Even though you allowed George Floyd to suffer, which cost him his life. So don't try to end your life because now you are receiving the consequences for taking someone's life, murdering someone, and now when you receive the proper consequences, now you want to exit stage left and end your life. No. Another thing too, I don't know what probably could have contributed to Derek wanting to take his life, because he probably was in there as well with other individuals who are melanated and who are within the jail system. And they know about, may possibly know about this case as well. So when they seen him come into their prison, they probably want a piece of him. So that's probably another reason why too. But don't try to end your life just because you're receiving your consequences. Nah, player. You remember, stick this one out. And like I said earlier, I felt like from his response, I felt like he honestly didn't expect to jail. Like jail time didn't really cross his mind. Like he wasn't really worried about it. He was like real confused. Like he really got charged for murdering George Floyd. And even in the video too, you look like you didn't even care that you was on this man's neck when he said he couldn't breathe. Now the Raiders, after the verdict, the Raiders end up releasing a tweet, and it had a picture of "I Can't Breathe" for 2021. Now, people have mixed opinions about this tweet. Let's get into the mixed opinions. Now, one person ended up saying, "I've said some stupid shit in my life, but dang, y'all, George Floyd is still dead. His child is fatherless. Only one of the officers responsible for his murder have been held accountable so far. People of color are still being targeted disproportionately by police officers." That's what one tweet happened. And I also wonder what the other officers are going to receive. What other charges that they're going to receive? Are they going to receive too? Especially the ones that didn't really. I'm gonna say the ones that really didn't put their hands on George Floyd too much, but were actually there. I wonder would that happen, because because the way I'm looking at it, the way I'm thinking of it, for those who didn't quote unquote participate in the crime but were there, you probably get like accessory or something like that. That's just me, just going off the dome. It says the police shot a 15-year-old black girl while the jury was reading Derek's guilty verdict. It's not time to breathe easy yet. Listen, the other person said, "Listen, your intentions are good, but we cannot." Now, I'm gonna give my personal opinion. I'm gonna say this: I felt like their intentions were good, but I just felt like the execution was poor. I just felt like they probably should have waited some time, to put that out, especially since the verdict did happen. So it kind of made the situation. It was already a sensitive situation, but it kind of made it more sensitive. As the sensitivity happened, then it kind of went down a little bit. Then it kind of went back to the same level. So I feel like they probably should have waited. And then I felt like it would have been taken more. It would have been taken more in a good light, basically. I'm trying to use my words wisely, y'all. Alrighty, so let's get into this Mikaya Bryant situation. Now, Mikaya Bryant is a 16-year-old melanated girl, actually. She's 16 years old, and this particular situation ended up happening in Ohio. Now, there's a video, body cam, of where an officer, he's on duty, he's in his car, and basically what ended up happening is he ended up getting a call. And on the call, you can hear someone saying, "Please help us. Someone's trying to do X, Y, Z to us, yada, 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 yada." The cop ends up getting there. He sees that there's a big giant commotion going on. So what ended up happening is that he ended up getting out his car, and he noticed that as he's getting out this car, it looks like he was about to, this is where I think, this small part right here is where I think he was about to talk to the young lady or the woman that was in pink. But however, Mah'khia ended up charging this one girl, and the girl ended up falling. And she ended up charging the other lady in pink. And as she's doing that, you can see that she had a knife in her hand. Now, in the heat of the moment, the cop ended up taking out his weapon, his gun, ended up firing 4 shots. I believe it was 4 shots, and ended up killing Mikaya, Bryant. That's basically the sum of the video. Now, this is where now we're going to leave the video. Now we're going to talk about what I've seen on social media, what I've heard. What I've heard was people are speculating, people are saying that Mikaya was the one that called the police. Now, I'm a little skeptical about whether she was the one that actually called the police, only because, now I could be wrong about this particular part, but from what I've heard, the audio seemed like it was coming from the other group of ladies. Only reason I say that is because in the audio, it sounded like the girl, the person that was on the phone was like, oh my God, come help us. There's someone trying to stab us. And I could be wrong about this part. That was my interpretation. I'm going to look at it again. And then when I have to talk about the situation again, I'll make some corrections. Or just let me know in the comment section. But I'm kind of skeptical in thinking that it was Mikaya that called the cops or whatever. So he ended up firing off, ended up shooting Mikaya. People are saying that Mikaya was the one that made the phone call. People are also saying that it was Mikaya home of record. It was her residence. It was her people's residence that the other 2 ladies were at. And apparently they were trying to jump her. And apparently they were trying to do damage to her. Now, what I feel about the situation. Wait, before I get into that. Actually, no, I'm going to do it now. I feel like with the particular cop. Now, I'm not going to say if the shot or him shooting Mikaya was justified or not. The only reason I'm not going to say that because that's going to be an argument because some people are going to feel like it's justified. Other people's not going to feel like it's justified. So I'm not going to try to make people believe if something was justified or not. I do want to talk about this situation to its root and to its core. I do feel like he was in a lose-lose situation. Because I felt like because this is me just trying to interpret, I felt like if, in his head, if he didn't shoot Mikaya or quote unquote take Mikaya down, he possibly it could have been his fault to why a woman either got stabbed or died in front of him. Or what actually happened is if you shot Mikaya, he was going to be in a situation where it could be taken out of context. Now, I'm also going to say this. There was another video where there's cops around and one of the cops decides to say out their mouth, Blue Lives Matter, which I felt like was a very inappropriate statement. Apparently, you were trying to antagonize the family. You was trying to antagonize. You was trying to be quote unquote funny, not really funny, but you was trying to be disrespectful. Blue Lives Matter. Now, let's talk about the reactions of this case, this situation. Now, the general public had 2 different stances. One stance was it justified? The other stance, was it not justified? Now, like I said before, I'm not going to tell you whether it was justified or not. Because people are going to have their opinions and people are going to think the way they want to, even if you prove to the T that it was justified or not. Now, LeBron James ended up making a statement. Well, not really a statement, but he ended up tweeting out the officer's name. The officer's face, actually. Let me go to it. I don't want to quote. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Where is it? Yes. He ended up tweeting the officer's face, his identity, and he put "you're next." Now, in response to that, two individuals in particular decide to respond. One person is considered to be Candice Owens, who was the melanated individual conservative commentator, but politician. I believe she's a politician, commentator, somebody. Well, she always commenting, but so commentator. And OJ Simpson. Now let's start with OJ Simpson, because OJ is going to be the easy one. OJ, you never should have commented. You should just when it comes down to situations like that, you probably should have just left it alone. You probably never should have said nothing. You probably should have sat on the bench. You should have left this whole situation, your opinions, your perspectives, your what you think happened or what you think that should have happened. You probably should have kept all that to yourself. All of that to yourself. Because when I tell you, in these comment sections, they were letting OJ have it. It was funny. And I was thinking the same way, like, why would you even say something like that? You should be quiet. Shush. Now, Miss Candice Owens. And I got my own little notes when it comes down to Candice Owens. Now, I watched her video. She ended up making a video. And I ended up watching her video. Now, with Candice, thing with Candice is that sometimes I do agree with some things that she may say, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can get with that, But I'm not gonna say agree all the time. I'm gonna say I understand what her perspective is. Doesn't mean I always agree, but I understand where she may be coming from. But however, what always messes it up, she'll probably say something, and I'll be like, girl, why would you say that? Or why would you even think that was appropriate to say? So she always say things that I agree, but she always messes it up with, she says some out of line, out of pocket stuff that I disagree with when it comes out of her statements. Now, one thing that she said within the video. Well, for one, she was going hard at LeBron James, saying X, Y, Z, he's trash, yada, yada, yada. Now, another thing that she said is that the media manipulates the masses. And I do agree. The media does play a part in the reactions that either melanated people in general give out because of certain stories, and they may leave out certain details. Or they may put up this certain image to where we think the story is this way, but find out other details that were left out. So yes, I do believe that the media does play a part when it comes to manipulating the masses with stories and then getting a response from the general public, especially those who are allies of melanated people or melanated people themselves. So yes, I do believe that it does play a part. She also ended up making some statements about Black Lives Movement, talk about how it was fraudulent and she's seen it from a mile away. Now, Black Lives Movement as an organization, I will say this. I have seen some sketchy stuff from the Black Lives Movement organization as an organization. But as the movement, it's something different for me personally. So I felt like in the video, she was using trigger words to help invalidate the movement, not the organization. Because like I said before, like I just said, the organization has had some sketchy stuff. But the movement of Black Lives Matter to invalidate that particular movement, not organization. Two separate things. Now, when she was saying, when the whole Jacob Blake situation ended up happening, talking about how he was there and he had a weapon on, he had a knife on him, and next thing you know, he was there, he was harassing this Black woman, he was doing access to this Black woman, she was using Black women, how basically using the notion that black on black crime, and then, you know, the police did their job, yada, yada, yada. And I felt like she was using that to discredit the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, Candice, the notion that I get from Candice is that she's pro-police, pro-law enforcement, obviously by the rhetoric that she uses. But the thing is, the thing is with Candice is that, and I feel like a lot of people are missing out when it comes down to this pro-law enforcement or anything like that. Before I get into that, let's talk about this whole thing about defund the police. The whole idea, now, I'm going to say this. This is what I think people are saying when they say defund the police. When people are saying defund the police, I don't believe they're saying or they have this idea that we don't need cops at all. We need to get rid of all law enforcement. I don't believe they're saying that. What people are saying, at least the people I've spoken to, what they are referring to, what they're saying is that we need to clean up law enforcement. We need to get rid of bad law enforcement. We need to get rid of bad politicians. We need to get rid of bad individuals within the government. That is what they are saying, at least the people I've spoken to. So, but let's also talk about this whole thing, another part of defund police. In a perfect society, yes, we wouldn't need police officers. We wouldn't need law enforcement. Hell, we wouldn't even need laws. But however, we do. Now, what's the reason why we wouldn't need any laws, any law enforcement? Because the community will hold each other accountable in a perfect world. So when you see your melanated brother, sister messing up, say, hey, get back in line. But however, since we don't live in a perfect society or a perfect world, we understand that we do need law enforcement. They just want to weed out the bad law enforcement, the racist law enforcement, the homophobic law enforcement, transphobic law enforcement. That is what they mean by defund the police. Now, Candice, back to Candice and this pro-police thing. You can be pro-police all you want. Like I said before, just because you may have some good cops, we understand there are good cops out there. We understand there's bad cops out there. But like I said before, when there is a system that's built to destroy or be more harsh to minorities, and it's built to favor the majority, no matter who is in the system, who's ever within the system, as in government, the system gonna still take its course. That's the reason why we're trying to change laws and stuff like that. So that's the thing that I think that's the point that Candice is, I feel like, not grasping, or she's choosing not to grasp, or she just really just don't know. And another thing, I forgot the man's name, is that, and to prove the point, I forgot the man's name he was also pro-police, and it was a situation that ended up happening outside. I believe it was a fight. And what ended up happening is that he ended up calling the cops. He was breaking the fight up, but in the midst of that, when the law enforcement ended up arriving, they ended up shooting him and killing him dead, even though he was pro-police and he was pro-Blue Lives Matter. And that brings up the fact of, yes, you can be 100% pro-police or quote-unquote pro-law enforcement or quote-unquote pro-Blue Lives Matter. But however, with you and your melanated skin and the notion and the types of stigmas that come along with that mentally, of what other people may think of melanated people, that still plays a big part as well. So yes, you may have this notion of, pro police, pro law enforcement, blue lives matter, but yet you got to realize with this bad boy right here, that can still cost you your life. Despite what you may think on the interior, your exterior is what cost people their lives. And she also talked about black privilege. How do I feel about this? I feel like what she's referring to, especially when she said the LeBron James thing, I feel like privilege, that's going to be a debatable thing. People are going to have their own opinions about that. But I do feel like she was referring to how us as melanated people, we can say just about what we want, yada, yada, yada. But however, if somebody else says it, it seems to be an issue. So I can see what she's saying there, but I think privilege is going to be like a debatable thing about that whole thing right there. Now, she also talked about a racist agenda, referring to, if you take all the law enforcement off the streets, if all the law enforcement, are taken away and they're just gone, we know the community that's going to be affected the most, which are, quote unquote, the ghettos, the hood, where the mostly minorities live and stuff like that because of quote unquote crime. Candice also talks about how she could understand if police resign or they go on strike because of the way that they are treated. Now, let me say this. When it comes down to this whole thing, now the thing with Candice is that sometimes she may throw in some things. I'll be like, okay, I can understand. I said I always agree. I can understand where she may come from, but then she may say something and then it's going to be like, girl, why did you say that? Like thinking that only black communities will be affected. Or actually, I'm going to take that back. Saying that black communities are going to be affected, which I agree with. We are going to be affected, because we don't live in a perfect world. But at the same time, she also come with the stereotypical things of, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and talked about how LeBron James doesn't live in the hood and X, Y, and Z. Last time I checked, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't live in the hood as well either. You don't live there anymore, sweetheart, to my knowledge. So you probably a little detached from the hood as well, if you ever been. So yes, sometimes she may say some things, I'll be like, okay, I can understand. But then it's like, it seems like there's this area or this notion, this undertone message of anti-blackness this energy that she gives off. Now, let's also talk about the blurred lines of what's right and what's wrong. Because people always talk about how Mikaya was the aggressor, Now, I'm going to say this. I really don't want to get too deep because I got some videos to show you why I think the way that I do. Now, from what I understand, the two ladies came to Mikaya's house. They came to Mikaya's residence, not the other way around. So let's take the political police standpoint out the way. Y'all decided to go to Mikaya's house. Y'all decided to walk up to her residence to do X, Y, and Z, or God knows what. And then when you get the response that you were looking for, now you want to call the cops. Now you want to call the police. And it cost that girl her life because y'all went there to be the aggressors. Y'all came to her residence being aggressive, starting it from what we know for right now. You went to her residence, and then when she quote unquote stand her ground, that cost her life. Now, blurring the lines of what's right and what's wrong. The parents, I believe that was the foster parents, they were wrong as well. Only reason I say this is because I feel like hood politics came into effect. The hood politics came into effect. The hood politics of they outside, they want to fight. So my child is not going to be no punk. You go out there and you fight one of them. I'll make sure they don't jump in. The other person doesn't jump in, but you go out there and you fight instead of keeping your child in the house or attempting to keep the child in the house. Because from what it looked like, it seemed like they weren't even trying to hold Mikaya back, despite her having a weapon in her hand. So that also played a part in the death of Mikaya, because I felt like if the parents, foster or biological parents, were there actually saying, no, you're not doing that, get back in the house, then that situation could have helped been avoided, especially once the cops got there. At least it never would have looked the way that it did. Now, let's go back into this, because Candice, she gave me a lot, so I had to really get into that. Now, let's get into this. Let's talk about the reactions that, okay, yeah. Well, okay, yep. I already talked about that, my fault. Let's talk about the racial difference when dealing with the police. Now, the differences when it comes to the majority Caucasian people compared to different minorities. When I talk about the racial differences of dealing with police officers, I'm talking about how they're either really aggressive or they're really trigger happy. And this is why some people are saying that the officer shooting Mikaya was not justified. Because there does seem to be a difference from when melanated people get arrested or come in contact with law enforcement to where our white counterparts come into contact with law enforcement. It seems to be a big difference. Now, let's talk about some examples. George Floyd. He was handled very, very aggressively, disrespectfully, and it cost him his life for a nonviolent crime. Freddie Gray was handled rough, treated like an animal, and denied medical care when asked to receive medical care. My mouth is dry. Deontay Wright was handled very roughly and shot and killed. Now, you're going to ask yourself, he resisted, he did X, Y, and Z, or whatever people, he should have complied. The issue with that is that when they do comply, they end up getting beat up or still end up getting shot and killed. And we're going to see some videos of what I mean by that. Let's get into this, because I want to show you guys a video, because people love to say, you know, she had a knife. Now, this is the reason why people are saying it's unjustified, because I feel like to its root, to its core, if the white counterparts or the majority was getting treated the exact same, it probably wouldn't be so much of a it's justified, it's not justified thing. So much of it. But this is the reason why we have this debate. Let me see. Let me add you.
But obviously, I can't trust you not to run anywhere. All right? So, come on. Come on. I'm going to put you in handcuffs for now. Okay?
Cops say Ferguson pulled a knife and stabbed the deputy in the neck.
He stabbed him.
The young man takes off again.
Stop! Stop right now!
You can see the deputy's pistol in his hand, but he switches it for a non-lethal taser.
Drop the knife!
Other deputies show and handcuff Ferguson.
I got stabbed in the neck.
Then they stem the blood with a special gauze known as quick clot.
He spent the night in the hospital.
So this is the reason why I don't care if she had a knife or not. Now, like I said before, I feel like the cop was in a lose-lose situation, but I feel like to its core, if the majority was getting treated or the minority was getting the same treatment as the majority, then this probably wouldn't be too much of a conversation. But however, since melanated people are getting killed disproportionately to law enforcement compared to their white counterparts, that's the reason why we're having this conversation if something's justified or not justified to its core. Now, we're going to talk about Serena Probis. Now, Serena Probis, she was under the influence, and when detained by cops, she spit and pissed on officers. That's basically what the officers told their higher ups. And she was taken into custody, and she also smiled in her mugshot. She resisted. Now, that was a Caucasian woman. Let's get into this video. This video right here, y'all know I'm known to butcher her name. Xiomara Garcia. She basically was getting arrested for battery, assault, or whatever. And basically, in the midst of her getting arrested, she ended up kicking the officer, resisted, and it got punched 2 times in the face. She was also under the influence, or she was high. I believe she was high. We're gonna watch that video. This is Xiomara Garcia.
¿Pero qué hizo?
Mira. No.
Hey. The cop stopped her, but there's a difference in the treatment. Now, where were we? Now, see how she resisted a minority. Got treated for resisting. Now we're also gonna go to this other video of this guy. He's fighting a cop, Caucasian guy is fighting a cop in a store and resisting.
Pick him up.
Stop resisting!
Oh my God, what
I'm
happened?
not going to tell you again.
Oh, he was still damn.
He pulls out his gun every single time, but he doesn't use it. Oh, hold up. Don't freeze. Let me just pause. Boy. Ooh. Hold up. What's going on? I froze. Hello? Am I back? No, that's just about the gist of it. Let me go back. Come on, come back. Ugh. I'm over here freezing. Come on, StreamYard. Will it come back to me? Is it back? All right. Let's see.